I'm Renee Ballard and the host of Lex Talk Design, and today we are speaking with Bernadette Wilson. Bernadette is an architect and her career is an interesting one because whilst she's always been focused on design and architecture, she's actually worked on all sides of the industry. Currently, she's in the education sector, where she's the Department Manager of Architecture at Monash University in Melbourne. Before this, she's worked with the associations such as the DIA, Design Institute of Australia, and AIA, Australian Institute of Architects. And rounding out the trifecta, she's also worked agency side with various architectural studios. Welcome, Bernadette.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you for welcoming me.
So how we met, years ago when we started Lex, we joined the DIA back in 2018. In 2019, I wanted to do an event at Melbourne Design Week, so I pitched it. Timothy Moore wrote back and said, the idea has some merit, but I think you should, I see you're a DIA member, you should incorporate them on the event. So I was like, okay, cool beans. So I had never met Bernadette before, and Bernadette and I went and had coffee and I pitched my idea for the event, which, side note, got cancelled because of COVID, but that was a different thing. And Bernadette immediately was so useful and so helpful, but also quite cunning because the election was coming up for the State Council, and she was like, you know that you could nominate and we need people on the State Council. So, you know, I was like, not altruistic in my cause. I was like, okay, I'll join the State Council. You'll help me with the event. And bish, bash, bosh, here we are today. And one of the things I have loved working with Bernadette during our mutual time at the DIA was you are the first person I would call if I needed to get a project off the ground. You are the fastest, most adaptable, yes, how person I've ever crossed paths with.
That's good to hear. That's interesting because you have crossed paths with a lot of people and have gotten lots of things off the ground. So that's great.
Thank you. That's how I know.
Yeah, totally. And I kind of forgot that, and I work with Timothy now. So Timothy is at Monash as the Dean of Engagement. So he and I actually work quite closely together. So, you know, everything sort of goes full circle. But I didn't forget. Like, I remembered that was our meeting. Well, obviously, I did have another. I tried to get you on council. You got onto council. We had some good times there. But a lot of it was through COVID. And that's Melbourne Design Week, 5 years ago, pretty much this last couple of weeks. Of that whole, and again, that program getting cancelled on the eve of COVID. And I remember we went for a walk down to where the pavilion was. We were sort of umming and ahhing if we were going to go ahead and do it, and it was going to be outdoors anyway, wasn't it? It was going to be down there in the pavilion, and then pulled the pin. That never happened. It never got off the ground.
Never got off the ground. And I saw a call out from Melbourne Design Week. I was like, do I go again? Even though like, do I go again? And I was like, I think I'll just leave that be. And that's the rub, isn't it, with projects? Like, a lot of the best projects end up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, totally. And that was my role at the GIA. You know, we did liaise a lot with Melbourne Design Week and NGB about getting a suite of programs off the ground. And because we were the DIA, a lot of people would come to us seeking support, either, you know, fiscally or through just event support. You know, you were wanting to be involved, but you also wanted to give back. And, you know, people also don't realise either that, you know, organisations like the DIA, more so than the AIA, run on the smell of an oily rag. Like, they are really, really run on volunteer engagement, volunteer involvement, and that can burn people out too. So you do see that cycle of people getting involved and they're not sort of necessarily staying around.
Yeah, but I get what you mean as well, because now when I get, you know, so I used to be on the State Council, I'm not now, but when I see an email come through from any association and I see something that the members have put together, like an event, I'm like, I feel like I know how hard that would have been to get that off, because with associations, especially NGOs, they're part sponsored, part volunteer, part membership, part NGO, part corporate, like, there's so many agendas. Benignly, so many agendas.
And you have that sort of federal state politic model as well. So you've got the sort of the national body that oversees everything, but it's the state chapters that has the members and has the engagement. So you've got the members on the ground that want to do events and programming, but then there's sort of the national direction which has particular strategic ideas. So it's a real balance of it's a political dance of delivering what members want to do. And then getting that engagement by volunteers to stay engaged and, you know, wanting to get out of it what they put in. So, yeah, we had some great times during COVID. You know, a lot of our meetings were online a lot of our programming was online. We don't want to go back and talk too much about that, but, just pivoting to an online world to deliver programs was challenging. But we did a podcast. We did a series of podcasts. That gave you the podcast bug, didn't it?
100%. And Tom, who edits, we're talking about this before, but Tom Stevenson from Podlike, who edits Lex Talk Design, I met Tom directly through you, through the first podcast with the GAA.
Yeah, and that's, I still find myself in that kind of role. I'm a bit of a connector, and I guess because I've been around for so long and in so many different guises through architects and interiors and within practice and now education, I kind of know a lot of people. And I'm like, is it Anne Hathaway? Is it the Princess Bride movie who sort of goes up and supports the Queen or someone? I can't remember. Or no,
Never Wears Prada.
Yeah. Where she's in the ear of, that's so-and-so. That's sort of me. I think I know who's who in the zoo. They don't necessarily know me, but I kind of know. I know who's where and how to connect.
You do, because whenever we would organise an event, we would float names past of people that could be involved, and you knew them from this sphere, from that sphere, through this sphere, you are a connector.
And I'm not afraid of just asking to see things can happen. Like, there's no, you don't ask, you don't get. And in one of my roles, when I was at the AAA, I used to deliver and curate do you like study tours? So I travelled on 3 with the AIA and curated 5. I did the tail end of one and start of another in between having kids. And that was all, reaching out, connecting people, finding practices, asking the participants who were on the tour who they were interested in connecting with, cold calling, cold emailing, telling them about the program and just curating an itinerary. And then, then we just turn up. I travelled and went to very many cities with that program, and it was great. And I look back now, I'm trying to organise something else to Europe later on in the year, and I was, we would travel to 3 cities, 2 days in each city, and have 6 appointments a day, and you just go bang, 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 and I was like shuffling 6 to 7 people around, Copenhagen on bikes and going and visiting here and here and here. And people would say, how do you organise this, or how do you pull the itinerary together? I was like, well, I don't know. You just ask. You email or you call.
I wonder if that's a 3-way between, being a designer, an architect, you're a problem solver. It could just be the way you were born. That's who you are. But also because you're one of 300 children from Tassie, aren't you?
It is, like, being the youngest of a large family. I had to become pretty industrious and pretty independent at a young age, because otherwise you would just got lost in the soup. So, yeah, I think that's certainly nature nurture. But having said that, I think I had 2 older sisters that went to university for a year but didn't continue. I was the first girl in our family to go to university. None of my parents did. My older brother did. He went and then sort of deferred and then went back and completed his studies. But I was the only first one to graduate from university. So going to university was actually a means to get out of town, not necessarily to further my education. So, once I had that opportunity, I sort of hot-footed it to Launceston, in Tassie, where they offered architecture. So it was offered in Hobart and Launceston, but the year I started in Launceston was the last year they offered it in Hobart.
And is that why you picked architecture? Because it's 6 years? You're like, I need to get out of here for a long time.
Yes and no. I don't know. And it's a bit of a cliche answer, but it was one of those things where at school I kind of was a generalist at lots of things. I really liked art, and I actually really liked, I really was aware of space, or the concept of space and the politics of space. So I was kind of interested in space. I was reasonably good at art. I did tech drawing. I was inquisitive. I actually wanted to be a journalist. I had an older sister who was a journalist. I wanted to be a journalist. I also wanted to be a detective. So I'm curious and inquisitive. And there were a few people at our school where I went to in the north of Tassie. There were a few people ahead of us that had done architecture. So I just kind of thought it was an interesting avenue to study. But, it wasn't medicine, which I wasn't interested in that. But it wasn't like you weren't going to be boxed in. There were a lot of opportunities. And in Launceston, my sister was doing furniture design. So she was a year above me, a fine art and furniture. So I really went to Launceston because my sister Catherine was there. So if she had gone to Hobart, I would have gone to Hobart. I did try and enrol and come to Melbourne, but it just wasn't. It was a little bit too hard for a little naive girl from Burnie, Tasmania. I didn't quite know what to do. I I came over here, so I stayed in Winter Rochester.
You mentioned before the politics of space. I don't think I've heard that phrase before. Can you tell me more?
Just like the hierarchy of space, and I think about government and political spaces. So Parliament House in Canberra, I was really interested in that and how that's designed. So you could actually walk on the roof of Parliament House. So it was this sort of architectural gesture of putting the people first. So that's sort of the politics of space. And it's a strange thing, but when I was a kid, there was a supermarket in, and this is like 3 or 4. There's a supermarket in our little downtown, and it had an underground car park. And I just always remember being really interested of that experience of going in and underground, but then you're going in a ramp, you're walking back up above, but then there were these little air vents at the street level. So I was aware that you were going under, but there was street level, but you could see feet, and then you had to go up this ramp, and it had an escalator, which was out there. Like that was, it's a small town Tasmania, to go into the car park. So just that politics space, and even like playing in playgrounds and being a kid in a playground and you're zoned to a certain area, and it's like, well, why couldn't I go there? It's like, oh, that's where the big kids are. So just understand, just being aware of where you belong in space. So that was always, I was interested in that.
I've just never heard, I get the concept, I just never heard it with such a pithy, great phrase, because, I mean, it's an odd thing to say, and for someone as noisy as I am, but I grew up, if you asked me when I was little, well, the two things I wanted to be when I was little was an adult and invisible. And so, not to do anything sneaky, probably only to do sneaky, but just, and it's that politics of space as well. Sometimes you just want to disappear, you want to be there, but you just don't want, you just think, and I see, we have daughters of a similar age, I was 11, and sometimes, she has a shy attack when we're out, and I'm trying to cajole her out of it, and I'm like, would you just rather be invisible? And she's like, I'm not even going to blink, until she warms up and she's fine. But it is that, and so I'm just further along that, creating spaces where people feel, because when you walk into a restaurant, you immediately know where you want to sit.
Totally, yeah.
And it's about that too, feeling that comfort.
Yeah. And also, just urban space. I actually did an exchange, and I probably got more interested in this as I got further into my degree. I did an exchange when I was in third year, and I did a semester in urban design in Krakow in Poland. So I got more interested in sort of urban and the bigger scale, and understanding again, how human works in the municipal space, understanding lighting and trees and streetscapes and what you feel comfortable in and the proportion of you to the building. And, Japan's a classic example. You've been to Tokyo, you love Tokyo. So you go on the main streets or the main thoroughfare where the buildings are sky high, but you take one street back and you just immediately feel comfortable because of the width of the street is in proportion to the height of the building. And you as a human, your human fits comfortably in that space. So you immediately feel comfortable. And, it's not a windswept tunnel. So they just thought about how the human fits within that space. The human.
And the bones.
Yeah.
The bones, even if the space is awful, not awful, but you can feel the bones. It's I remember someone saying that about gardening once, the garden needs to have good structure and layout and good bones.
Yeah.
And I know that with a good garden, even when it's overgrown or full of weeds, it still feels right and good to be amongst, as opposed to some gardens have beautiful plants, but the bones are wrong and it's never going to go anywhere.
Yeah. And, good architecture and good design is like that. When it's right. You feel it. And I also had a very strong interest in music. I did music all through school and played cello and played in local orchestras. Never at a great level, but I've always been really interested in sort of the analogy of music and architecture, rhythm and pattern and what feels harmonious and it's that same sort of thing, what feels right. And yeah, I'm kind of tapping around a bit now.
No, not at all. I think it's really underrated as a skill because it can't be quantified. Yeah, it gets looked over because, with music, I'm like an idiot savant. I love music, but I can't understand a crotchet or a quaver. I don't get it. I went to one piano lesson in grade 6 and she said I'd have to cut my nails. I never went back. Really. But I love music. But the thing is, I can't tell you where to put the beats and stuff, but I can tell you when it's wrong and I can tell you when it's right. And your shoulders will tell you because your shoulders will just start going, and you can't help yourself. Even the most rigid person will tap a toe when their song comes on. So I get, and it is, and I wish we could quantify it, but yeah, you know, when you just know you're like, you know, when the table's in the wrong spot or something's the wrong height, and you're like, that window's just wrong, like that end, it's not subjective, it's just is wrong.
Yeah. And when it's right, it's hard, it's like a perfect harmony. It's like it just sings.
Yeah, absolutely. Dare I ask, what do you love about the Australian design industry?
I think it's supportive and collegiate. I know you know what I mean. I think the other. It is very supportive and it's very collegiate. And I think programs like the Dual Life Study Tour really bring that as sort of alumni out, so that that program brings together particularly within the architecture, brings together the 5 recipients at the end of each year with all the previous year's recipients, so they have a big alumni program. So that's just a really strong network of people who are collegiate and supportive. The Institute of Architects just hosted their presentation for Juries Day at Monash just this Saturday gone. It was a great day. It was a great outing at Monash, and it's just so lovely to see people who don't see each other throughout the year, but they're catching up and they're connecting and they're supporting each other and they're sitting on each other's presentations. So I think it's supportive, and I think it's probably the Australian sort of not laissez-faire, but when I take these groups overseas, and you can really see how Australians bat above their weight. Like they do some amazing things, and you go to somewhere like we took a group to Kelly Wearslow's studio in Los Angeles in about 2018. And we had Sarah Jane Pike from Art and Pike on our tour. And the latest Australian Vogue was on Kelly's big credenza with all these marbles and beautiful little things. And Sarah just opened it up and just left it open on her page. And, you know, so Kelly was looking at that and referring to that and then looking at Sarah Jane and making the connection. So, you know, we bat above our weight on an international scale, I think, and probably don't always think that.
Oh, 100%. I think it's part of my bad attitude is I suffered, I just have a bad attitude in general. I feel the same, like, you know, even outside of design, but I accuse Australia sometimes of having islander syndrome where it just gets very small and tunnel here. And then when you go away, and, you know, I've lived in various places around the world, and you come back, I'm like ready for a procession. Like, you know, I've been to the other worlds, you know, I'm back, I come with information. And everyone's like, shut up.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear what? You know, and I won't go on my diatribe of how rude I can be about that. But I think I've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, that there is a more collegiate, supportive community out there than. So what I've accused Australia of, I'm actually doing to Australia too. I'm rectifying. We're here, aren't we?
I just think, well, particularly because I studied in Tassie and we were a small group, we were all pretty much connected still. Like, I think, you know, across the whole university, our whole faculty of architecture, I think it's only about 300 students. Like in first year, there was about 50 of us, and then in fifth year, there was probably about 30. So you all sort of know each other, and you don't necessarily know each other just in your year. You know the ones that are above and below you. And because back in 96, 95, 94, life was a lot more social on university campuses, like, and in a regional town, it's all about parties and connecting and you know, forming our own student groups. So that's something I think you do stay connected, and then a lot of Tasmanians end up here in Melbourne, and then you do sort of stay connected.
Yeah, and architecture, I feel like, this is anecdotal, but architecture feels like the kind of profession that you study in and stay in relatively tightly, whereas, you know, design, because it's like, I can understand, because you can stay in the role and just gather experience, like lawyers or accountants. It can be a linear path, rather than visual communicators, which could slide across to graphic design or slide to web design. Like, that's a more fluid kind of profession.
Yeah, you do. You know, you tend to sort of stay within that sort of space. Yeah.
Are you so like savvy with who's doing what that you can spot like a new project, a build of like residential, commercial, and you can tell the style and know what architect it is, or have a feeling of that you know who it is?
Yes and no. I probably could more. So 10 years ago, probably not so much of late, but again, going to the presentation to juries program, you know, it's good to see someone like Todd DeHood, who was working with Mel Bright Studio Bright, so he's gone. He has another practice with two other people, so you can sort of see the entomology or the genealogy of who's moved around practices. So Todd presented a couple of projects, beautiful work, so it's good to see that kind of generation come through. He was working with Mel for a few years, now he's doing his own thing, so just sort of knowing who and think it's Tara Ward from Fowler and Ward. She was working with Claire Cousins for a while. So just sort of seeing, that generation now sort of taking off and doing their own thing. So yes and no. Many years ago, someone did, when I was working at the DIC chapter at the Institute of Architects, someone did it was almost like a Metro bus map of architects in Victoria, and it sort of started with, I can't think who it was, it might have been Peter Corrigan or Maggie Edmond, but there was sort of all the mind map, or everyone who was connected to who and who was related to who and who's worked where, and now they've done their own thing. It was really interesting. It's just good to see who's, where the lines of connection are.
I think we have that now, but we just call it LinkedIn. No, I'm kidding. When you see someone's, like, this person's movement, all of a sudden their 2IC's gone, and then you're like, oh, they're going to make a play for this. And
you can see that with some practices, a certain style, but then there are other studios where I've worked with someone like CUNY that doesn't have a similar theme. It's all quite different, and they've got a pretty flat hierarchy of senior staff that chip in and contribute to good, and so you can't sort of always see.
Yes. Oh, ain't that the rub? It's kind of like in a way, there could be two distinct paths, because you would not be able to spot our work in a lineup because we work commercial retail. So I think designers and architects can fall into two camps. One is they are hired for their distinct style, or visual aesthetic style, or politics of space style. And then the other one is because they can deliver to the brief. So their style is, like I was saying, we're working commercial retail. Our projects have to absolutely reflect the client, and that's, I suppose, different to residential. That's a whole different bag, but yeah. So can I ask you, in your opinion, what do you think could make the design and or architecture industry betterer, stronger, like more of, less of in Australia?
Betterer.
I
think we're at a tipping point with, obviously, housing. Affordable housing is a big issue. And I know they've announced the election this morning, so that should be a high priority. But we really need to be custodians and aware of materials and the life cycle materials and what materials we're using, and can they be broken down, the circularity of materials. I think that's something that really needs to be taught more. It is being taught, but it needs to be made aware more. And you look and fit out culture of getting a new fit out every 6 years or something. I don't think that's a very, very healthy environment. There's a lab at Monash. They've got a number of different research labs, and one of them is the FBI, the Future Building Initiative, and a lot of that is researching what sort of materials we can use, 3D printing, cross-laminated timber, and doing flat pack housing. So
making the industry betterer, and it does. And I get what you mean with the fit out. Yeah, I think the fit out's a good one because everyone talks about sustainability. And if we could just have it in longer, if we turn things over less, it's an alternate way of being sustainable, as opposed to everyone just talks about, recycled cork and all the usual suspects. But there's a few different ways to skin that cat.
Totally, and just being a responsible citizen, if you're building something, think about what it's being built with, and when someone does want to come along and build something else, what can be reused, what can be unscrewed and packed down. I haven't been to the NGV for the current exhibition at the moment, but the Breathe Architecture, their current installation, the pavilion in the back, is kind of a play on that. It's a play on the McMansion, but everything can be unbolted and screwed down and reused, and it's just being aware of what we are building with.
And then, speaking of Monash Uni, and you studied architecture and now you're working education side in architecture, is it very, very different or quite similar in your experience with both?
It's very different. There is a lot more emphasis on student wellbeing and making sure that there are services available for students in this environment. Monash has, and as most of the universities do, have counselling. We're really aware of the student journey, making sure that the student has what they need and support around them. I don't remember having any of that when I was a student. I think you were just sort of in and out. But again, uni was very social for our age group. It's not so much that anymore. It's a lot more complex, but it's a more complex world that we are living in. The way we were taught at uni, first year you were sort of small domestic size projects to understand the sort of domestic scale. I think the first thing we did was actually a little shed. Then the second year it sort of gets more complex and you perhaps do more of a public building or something of a larger scale. Then you sort of went into res multi. But the way they teach design studio at Monash is in second and third year we have a studio and you can ballot for the studio. So an academic or an external educator comes in and presents a studio, and you can ballot and decide what studio you want to participate in. And it can be really broad. So it can be something from residential multiple housing to investigating quarries and what's being quarried and what comes out of quarries and what that can be reused. So when I was at university, it was sort of more the one site or the one project, and everyone sort of worked on the one typology, whereas now it's a lot broader that you can choose, and you can choose your path a lot broader. But again, yeah, I mean, the University of Tasmania was pretty small in comparison. You know, Monash, we've got 270 odd first year students, which is increasing on the previous year. So that's quite a lot. It's quite a lot of first year students. But yeah, the well-being side of it, I think, is a big thing. And yeah, just making sure the students have the support. And I think, you know, I'm sure that was there when I was a student, but I probably just didn't have the confidence to reach out or investigate. And I think I say that to the first year students, is don't be afraid to ask. Like, just ask. Like, we're here to help you. We're here to support you on your journey. You know, don't be afraid to ask.
Don't ask, don't get.
Don't ask, don't get. Yeah, that's my mantra.
I love it. Then also, on a personal side, I know you're renovating your house. What is it like being an architect renovating your own house?
Well, I'll just clarify that. I'm a registered non-practising architect. So I'm registered, but because I don't practice, I'm non-practising.
Are you saying that because of the certifier and the council permits?
Yeah, you know, I had I had a drafty go through all the permit side of things for me, and it's been such a painful process. And it kind of started during COVID, and it was the wrong time to actually do it and go through, because I was, you know, homeschooling, living with the kids, living in one tiny room, working. And in hindsight now, I should have just paced myself and gone a bit slowly. Like, I kind of rushed it and wanted to get it done. We bought a Renovator's Delight in Weatherboard, Victorian Weatherboard number in inner city Melbourne, and we bought it in May 2019. Did the basic things, restumping, some external weatherboards, double glazed windows, and then COVID hit. So we were kind of like in this, and we had a lean-to kitchen which was falling apart. It was on about a 5-degree slope and one toilet, you know. So we kind of lived with it for a while. But because COVID was happening, I was kind of in a rush to do it. So the space planning and the interior, I'm really happy with how I sort of space planned it. But the actual envelope and the opportunities, I've got a champagne ideations on a Prosecco budget. So, you know, and we had problems with builders, and I saved this for another podcast episode, Renee. This could be a whole episode of what not to do. It's been a painful process. And I've got, you know, a pile of sketches this high of all the, you know, how I kind of went through space planning and the politics of space, putting the parents on top, and in my politics of space, because you know too much. It's just hard. And then I walk. You know, we've done it to lock up, and the builder's gone, and now we're finishing bits and pieces ourselves, and that's partly the way we wanted to do it, but it's also partly budget-wise as well. But every time I kind of walk into that section, I was like, oh, I wish I had done that like that, and I wish I had done like that, and I should have done that way. But it's just, I've got to resign myself to the fact that it is what it is, and when it's finished, it'll be better than what it was. But it's hard, yeah.
So hard because you know so many tricks.
Yeah, and I should have got someone else to do it, and I did. But then I was sort of, you know, this was the instance when I was too afraid to ask, because it was sort of COVID and everyone was busy or not busy, and it was just a weird time to sort of seek help. So yeah, I didn't listen to my own mantra on that one. And it's just, yeah, it's a hard thing. I think, you know, I think that's why many architects and designers outsource it and give it to someone else, you know. And I've been trying to manage it for way too long, and now I'm just to the point where I just want it finished. But I don't think it'll ever be finished. Like, yeah.
Oh God, I agree. So we're, you know, in a similar boat. We're renovating, ironically, a terrace as well, and it's old. And but we have an architect, and I can tell you news from the front that I need either, because I think it's, well, I mean, there's all different sorts of architects, I suppose, but because you as an architect and us, you know, me working in design, like, you know stuff, you know tricks, and then you have things that you love that you want to incorporate, and you just want to maximize every inch and trick it up, especially these little houses. You want to trick it up so you just don't want to leave anything on the table. Like, you want everything to be the smartest idea ever. But it is, isn't it? You need to come to this moment of day zero where you're like, no more changes. I'm going to call it. And because I agonize over everything. And then I think, because we're renting, like our house is so decimated, we're in a rental. And I look at the rental and then I think about, agonizing over this handle for the kitchen, whatever. And I think, I'm living in this shithole. So I reckon whatever I pick here is going to be much nicer. So I've lived in worse than somewhere with a handle I'm not sure about.
Yeah, we've lived in it for the duration too. Like, we moved out for a short while we did an internal bathroom, but the way I designed it was the 2 bedrooms. It was 2 bedrooms and then a sort of double lounge dining. So the 2 bedrooms have remained the same front, and then the first of the lounge dining, we turned that into an internal bathroom and put the basin on the back wall. So then when we moved back in, we could put a temporary kitchen into the second part of the dining room, and then the lean-to was demolished, and then the new bit was built. And that was supposed to have been done in October of 2022, and we're only just finishing it. But we had issues with builders and engineers and soil and blah, blah, blah. But we've lived in it, and I keep having to say that. We've lived in it like this. Anything is an improvement. So, yeah, it's a journey, and it really is a journey. But I do want to do another one. I want to do this, have it for a few years, and then learn from my mistakes and do another one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like planning a wedding. You get to the end and you're like, and you find, you're married, you get to the end of the wedding day and then you're like, okay, now I'm ready to plan a wedding. Like, that's how I feel with renovating. You like, once it's finished, now I'm ready to do it. Like, now I know what I'm doing. But the whole time you're just flying blind.
Yeah. And I'd been working at the DIA and within practice, but when I was within practice in the last decade, it was more practice management and, on the front end, not on the tools. And, I was in and around it, but not. So that was probably rusty part of my brain. I mean, it's in there, but now, I know what I want, but I think next time I would have to outsource this to someone else. But then that's always budget as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any easy way. There's so many moving parts. And like you said, this is a whole separate podcast series of residential construction. My God, I'm rocking in the corner in the fetal position daily. It's walking where angels fear to tread.
Yeah, totally. Then it makes you appreciate architects and designers who do it really well. And, it's not easy. And you look at them and you look at that outcome, and it's to get an outcome, it's hard. It's hard work. So, and the value add that an architect can add, it's, people will just say, I can't afford an architect, but it pays off in the long run. I think engaging an architect is priceless. Yeah.
I think as well, like, I certainly feel when I do walk into a beautiful interior, like if it's someone's house or a hotel lobby, a restaurant, and it's, when it's really done, apart from the fact I love it and it's beautiful, I get a flash of envy that I wish it was mine, like I would squash it because I wish it was mine.
Yeah.
I also just feel like cheering everybody, because I know, everybody has great ideas, but going from the ideas to the build, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah, and particularly, big complex, like a big complex project, like, God, how does, there's a lot of moving parts. So you've got to appreciate it.
Yeah, sometimes I just feel like applauding. Like, I went to, this is very sensational, but the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in Melbourne, I think it's level 80. So you get into the lift on ground floor and you go straight, and the check-in's level 80, and the lift doors open, and it's this opulence of marble and views and beautiful gold tones, and you just want to applaud the team. Like, it's so breathtaking. A. B, they got it built.
Yeah, but we've used materials like good old Facebook Marketplace. Like, I've got some beautiful Japanese tiles, mid-century tiles, that I've got a couple of boxes of them that I'm ready to use, and we've repurposed a fireplace that we've got a Marketplace and bits and pieces. So, it's the house that Marketplace built. But you can go and you can find some really good stuff that, again, like, people are demolishing and they're renovating their new kitchen and bits and pieces, so you can get some really good things. And that's, I'm a magpie or a forager for like that, and it's, I actually found it hard to have done a finishes schedule like 2 years ago, because I'm changing my mind all the time. So, it's hard to have locked into ideas and materials and colours and colour palettes. from a long time ago. Yeah. I think I've showed you my nice mid-century Japanese tiles, didn't I? Yeah.
Yes, I'm hoping that you'll let me post that on Instagram after this podcast ep goes live.
Yeah, of course.
They're so beautiful.
It's not a cookie cutter house, Reno. It's not a cookie colour, like, you know, you're not going to see a beige. Not that there's anything wrong with beige, but you're not going to see much beige out there. It's going to be pretty out there.
Glorious. I'm looking forward to the reveal.
Yeah, it'll be a slow reveal, but and it might be a curated reveal.
One petticoat at a time.
That's the thing too, is like, in the naivety and all the pre-COVID energy, I thought I'll start a Instagram account for the renovation and add bits and pieces and do it slowly. And then it's like, now I'm just like, I can't be stuffed. Like, oh, there's a staircase, like the I do a little bit, like what I thought I had so much energy. Now, it's just, it's terrible, but it's tiring. Yeah. And, you know, working full-time, my husband works full-time, 2 kids, trying to manage it. It's Chris is doing a lot of the plastering, and once he finishes the plastering, I'll do the painting. So it's very hands-on, but it's hard to find time when you've got kids, weekends, sport, basketball, footy, art. But, yeah, find the time. The kids are getting on the tools with painting.
Well, my gorgeous, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been absolutely delightful. And like I said, the reveal photos will happen, so I can't wait to see them.
Yeah, I hope I've given you some sort of snippets or nuggets. I'm not very good at talking about myself, but I hope I've given you something there that someone will take away.
Yes, only gold nuggets. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Renee.
Thanks, Bernadette.